Good day. My name is Nandipha David. Today I'll be presenting to you a topic titled Tourism Development in Underdeveloped Areas. Before we begin, I'll briefly introduce myself. I'm a lecturer in tourism management at the University of South Africa, fondly known as UNISA. Before joining the world of academia, I worked in the tourism industry for over 10 years. I hold a master's degree from the University of Pretoria, and currently I'm a PhD candidate at the same university. My areas of specialization include destination management and marketing, sustainable tourism development, and with particular reference to today's topic, the area of rural tourism development. The South African Township and Village Tourism Association has asked me to speak on this topic because this is closely related to their mandate, which is to be the voice of township and village tourism in Southern Africa. This is an organization that promotes authentic, indigenous, world-class tourism services and experiences. Their mission is to transform the tourism value chain to be inclusive of indigents of the country and attract tourism investment to townships and villages. Their vision is to develop townships and villages into smart residential business hubs, foster job creation, social cohesion, and inclusion of indigenous South African tourism experiences. Today's presentation is going to start by introducing the topic of tourism development in underdeveloped areas. This is then followed by a discussion on rural tourism development. I'll then present briefly on a case study of the Wild Coast taken from my master's dissertation. I will then conclude with closing remarks. So what is tourism development? Tourism development is formed by two interrelated concepts, namely tourism and development. Tourism, on the one hand, is recognized as an economic sector with the potential to make a contribution towards development in a country or a destination. Development, on the other hand, is signaled by progress in the relation to the following objectives: increasing the availability and widening the distribution of basic life-sustaining goods such as food, shelter, and health. Another objective is to raise the average levels of living and decreasing inequalities in levels of living, for example, the provision of more jobs and a better education for all. It also includes expanding and increasing equality in economic and social choices. So when we meet these objectives, a country will then find itself in a state of development. Countries undoubtedly all over the world aspire to a state of development which is characterized by stable economic growth, equality in the distribution of economic benefits among the people, between the regions, socioeconomic transformation, modernization, and employment, to name just a few. So we cannot speak about tourism development in underdeveloped areas without touching on the subject of sustainable tourism development. Sustainable tourism development is defined as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Sustainable tourism development promotes the idea that social, environmental, and economic development is achievable whilst protecting the Earth's natural resources. Sustainable tourism development also requires that there is informed participation of all the relevant stakeholders, which includes you as tour guides, as well as a strong political leadership to ensure wide participation and consensus building. So when we speak of underdeveloped areas, we will make particular reference in this presentation to rural destinations. Now, rural destinations are defined as areas which are separately identified and promoted to tourists as places to visit, where enjoyment of the countryside and countryside activities is a primary motive. Now, rural tourism in a South African context showcases rural life, arts, culture, and heritage, thereby benefiting local communities and enabling interaction between tourists and locals for a more enriched experience. It has been identified that rural culture and lifestyle, escape from everyday life, and quality of time spent with visiting or friends and family or are motivations for participating in rural tourism activities. Village tourism is a subtype of rural tourism. And this is with particular reference to village tourism. This is where tour guides become very important in rural tourism development, because it is tour guides who we rely on to know the lay of the land, to know the indigenous language, to be able to showcase the rural life, the arts and the culture, and then to also create an interaction between the tourists as well as the local communities. So rural tourism is developing rapidly due to the rising interest from tourists looking for new experiences based around natural and rural areas in the open air, far from congested settings. And we saw this especially as we are recovering and coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. This, combined with the already rising demand for more authentic experiences that offer stronger engagement with local communities, their culture and products, as well as a demand for a greener approach in all stages of the travel experience. The pull factors, so when we speak of pull factors, we're talking about what attracts tourists to a particular destination. Related to rural destinations include tourism activities such as culture, gastronomy, so this is the local food and cuisine, beverage, health and wellness, adventure and sports, agritourism, and ecotourism, mountain, coastal, marine, and natural protected areas. Now, according to the National Rural Tourism Strategy of South Africa, rural tourism in our context includes ecotourism, nature tourism, cultural tourism, adventure, agritourism activities. Now, in the South African context, rural tourism is viewed as a means to eliminate poverty, create employment opportunities in rural areas. Now, the government has aimed to achieve this goal by developing a number of policies that they're hoping will positively impact the poor and by creating opportunities for economic growth. Now, I've listed here a number of policies that have been developed by the National Department of Tourism, and I encourage you to read up on these policies and see where you, as a tourism stakeholder, can participate to ensure that there is rural tourism development in your area. So as I mentioned earlier, I conducted a study for my master's dissertation titled The Development of Practical Guidelines for a Competitive Ecotourism Destination. And our case study was the Wild Coast of South Africa. Now, the Wild Coast is situated in one of the poorest provinces in our country, which is the Eastern Cape. And this is a world-renowned ecotourism destination. However, it is characterized by high levels of poverty and underdevelopment. So the objectives of this research included, ways to identifying ways to create a highly competitive ecotourism region, which is more accessible with a sustainable infrastructure that benefits the local communities without harming the environment. Another objective was to propose practical guidelines that would enable stakeholders to enhance the Wild Coast destination competitiveness in terms of accessibility and infrastructure within the parameters of sustainable ecotourism development. Now, I'm speaking about the Wild Coast, and you can hear the fondness in my heart. And I realize that some of you might not know the Wild Coast, you might not have seen it, and there might be some people who might not have heard of it because it is not an area that is well marketed and that is being positioned, for future development. So I'm going to play you this video, and I hope that you will enjoy it. So in conducting the research, we had interviews with the tourism business stakeholders in the Wild Coast. And we found that, in our interviews, what came out quite strongly is that there's a need for improved accessibility and infrastructure for the benefit of the local community. Because, whatever development happens for tourists will be primarily used by the local community. So it's very important that the local community is prioritized. And also, there was a need to assist in the preservation of the area as an ecotourism destination. So whatever development took place, be it in terms of accessibility or infrastructure, it needed to make sure that it follows the principles of an ecotourism destination. We then also conducted a survey amongst tourists who, were potential tourists to the Wild Coast. And what came out from those, that survey was that for the Wild Coast to be a competitive ecotourism destination, accessibility needed to be improved so as to not lead to mass tourism. So some people actually liked the fact that, the roads were rugged and, you had to take a 4x4 to be able to get there. So what they had requested, is that, or rather what they had suggested was that there needs to be an improvement, but it needs to make sure that it does not lead to mass tourism, which, again, similar to the interviews that we had with the local businesses, is that it needs to follow whatever development takes place follows the principles of an ecotourism destination. And then there was also a need by the tourists to say there's a need for adequate accommodation. And also access to medical and emergency services. I mean, I'm sure you saw in the video that it is a destination where hiking, is one of the features, as well as swimming and fishing. And so it's very important that whatever happens to a tourist, that there will be access to medical and emergency services, as these have a direct influence on the choice of a holiday destination. So the recommendations that we made following the study is that local and national tourism agencies should invest in improving the marketing of the Wild Coast, because it also came out quite strongly that not a lot of people knew about the Wild Coast. There needs to be a construction of small, well-maintained roads. So this is to say that, the local people, as well as the travelers, are not looking for these mega roads or highways. They just want well-maintained roads. And also what came out was that there needs to be training and empowerment of the local community to provide first aid and lifeguard services. And I put it to you as tour guides to say, this is another added benefit that you could add to your skill set, is by providing first aid services and getting the necessary certification and accreditation. And then following that was that, the tourism enterprises, so these are the businesses within the Wild Coast, had to commit to minimizing their impact on the environment. And then this speaks to sustainable tourism development. So in conclusion, I'm going to leave you with closing remarks that I hope will provide food for thought. And basically what is coming out in the literature and what we're finding is that there's an emerging school of thought which suggests that rural destinations should promote policies that stimulate innovative solutions, technology, and digitalization. So rural destinations are no longer just focusing on the issue of sustainability, but they're looking, to be more modernized and to participate actively in the fourth industrial revolution. Destinations, therefore, should have the same connectivity and access to technology as urban areas so that they are not left behind. This is key to ensuring market access for tourism businesses and a positive experience for travelers. So from the tourist perspective, this includes the automation of processes during travel. So that, when coming to South Africa, a lot of people are concerned about the crime, and therefore, carrying large amounts of cash is no longer, something that they want to do. So they would rather have cashless payments, access to fast and reliable internet, and also to have the opportunity for e-purchasing local products and services. All of this being provided without depersonalizing the service. And there's also, a need to contribute to improvements in the quality and safety of the tourist experience. So this is why then we would, look at providing more access to technology-enabled services for tourists. So my challenge to you as a tour guide is to say, how are you as a tour guide using technology to gain a competitive advantage and promote tourism in underdeveloped areas? Thank you. So I encouraged you to reach out to me using my email address, and you can find me on LinkedIn. But also, I encourage you to join the SETA Veto and add your voice, in promoting township and village tourism in Southern Africa. Thank you.